bless you today. If you can turn with me to Psalms chapter 20. There's going to be a lot of verses today, so if somebody's going to be ready, you can read the verses for me to help me out a little. Psalms 20, verse 7. This was a beautiful verse. I've read this verse, I don't know, 100 times. And for whatever reason, the word that always got in my head was, I will trust in the chariot. Some trust in chariots, some trust in horses, but I will trust in the name of the Lord. Every time I read, I think I read it as, I will trust in the name of the Lord. But this time when we were meditating, I paused to read the word remember. It was not the word trust. And that caught my attention. So I really want to say that the Lord wants to talk to us on this word remember. Remember the name of the Lord. The book of Psalms has many authors, right? David is one of the authors, but this particular psalm, Psalm 20, and even Psalm 21 is called the royal psalm. The royal psalm means it is a psalm written to the king in worship of the Lord. Now, it's written to the king normally when David goes to a battle or when he comes back from battle, it's about the king, but all in terms of worshiping the Lord. And this particular psalm is written for King David before he was going to go for a battle. Let's read this chapter fully. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. So this is where the priests will come and pray over David before he goes to a battle. They encourage his spirit, they pray over him, and they remind him what the Lord has done. And then they send him out, and then he goes with that encouraged spirit. So let's read it with that sense where, let's imagine the priests are standing in front of the King David, and as he's preparing for the battle, the priests are praying this song for David. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the Lord of God defend you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and strengthen you out of Zion. May he remember all your offering and accept your burnt offering. See, these are all psalm words of offering. They are encouraging David. May he grant you according to your heart's desire and fulfill all your purposes. We will rejoice in your salvation, and in the name of our God we will set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. This is affirmation now. Now they offered the praises, now they're affirming. Now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He would answer him from his holy heavens with the saving strength of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses. But we will remember the name of the Lord our God. They have bowed down and fallen, but we have risen and we stand upright. Save, Lord. May the King answer us when we call. So the King here, it also talks about Yahweh. Okay, they pray, they're encouraging the spirit of David, but this prayer is lifted up to Yahweh. And remember the name of the Lord. This was the word that the Lord gave me. For us to trust, some trust in chariots, some trust in horses. But all we have to do is remember the name of the Lord. That was beautiful for me when I read that, saying, you don't need to do much for God to bring victory in your life. It's a simple act of remembering the name of the Lord. For you to remember, you have to know the name of the Lord. This psalm was important for David. When you go for battle, this psalm was very important so that he would have his strength renewed. He'd have the confidence in the Lord. He'd have his courage strengthened up. All of that from the knowledge of who God is. So it is important for us. It's like we say we motivate somebody, right? But this is somebody helping somebody when they are kind of unknown. They don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come. They're blessing David with the knowledge of God. It's like you've heard this verse that you would always raise to your level of training. Have you heard this phrase before? If you're in the military or army, this is what they teach you. You'd always raise to your level of training. So if you're if you have a training and if you go to battle, you won't have time to think and plan certain things. When the gun is pointed at you, you would do certain things to exactly what you've been trained, what you've been taught. So that's why training is important, but training is no use if you don't remember your training. You would raise to that level. You know, David, when you talk about remembering, David in the valley of Elah, you know what happened in the valley of Elah? It's where he met Goliath, right? So if you read with me, 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 34 and 37. So we all know the story of David. So David, he goes, there's a battle going on between the Philistines and the Israelites. They're all standing. The valley, Elah is there, and then you have two little hills, and both the Israelites and the Philistines are on either side of the hill, and they're all shouting at each other, but nobody's waging war. They're waiting for somebody to come and battle with Goliath. And David comes there, he brings food, and he comes to meet his brothers to give them food, and then he realizes somebody is defiling the name of his God. And then he says that I'm going to fight with this man. Okay, then he goes around asking people, saying, what's this? What is happening? Why is he defiling my God? And somehow Saul hears the story that there's this young man who's going around asking, and then he calls him out and says, I'm going to do it. And he says, who's this young man? Come unto me, I'm going to talk to you. And when he looks at David, he says, you're a young man, you're a little boy. You don't even have the training in being in war. How are you going to fight with him? But Goliath has been trained as a warrior from his youth. So Saul is scared of David being a young man. But see what David's response is in 1 Samuel chapter 17, 34 and 37. And David said to Saul, so what's happening here, you see that David is remembering something. He's saying, David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and struck it and delivered the lamb and from its mouth. And when it rose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be one like them, seeing he has defiled the armies of the living God. And then he says, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And then Saul said, go, and the Lord be with you. So he's saying, I have done this. But he said, I didn't do that in my strength. He said, the Lord who delivered me from the paws of the lion and from the paws of the bear, he will deliver me from this Philistine, the uncircumcised Philistine. Remember what the Lord has done for you. You know, we just sang that song, Goodness of God. You know, when can you sing the goodness of God? When you remember what he's done, right? When you remember that he's a good God and the goodness of God. I sing of his faithfulness all the time. I sing of his goodness. You have to remember. Remember the Lord. Remember the name of the Lord. You know, talking about remembering. Let's read the verse 47 as well.
Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands.
So that's a confirmation of the Lord doing that for him. David, even though he ended up beating Goliath, but it was the Lord who delivered the Philistine. You know, when you remember, when you give God the glory and give him the place in your battle, in your situation, and he'll be the one who'll be your saving grace. You know, I thought of a joke. The joke goes like this. There were a couple, they were 90 years old, okay, and they had problems remembering things. So they go to the doctor for a checkup. And the doctor looked at them and said, your health is really good. You're all doing really well. But it's just that you don't remember. So why don't you try writing down things so you can remember them? So that night they go home and they're watching TV, and this old man, he gets up and he wants to go to the kitchen. He gets up from his chair and he walks to the kitchen, and his wife immediately says, and the old man asks the wife, "Do you want anything from the kitchen while I'm there?" And she says, "Yeah, why don't you get me a bowl of ice cream?" And he said, "Sure." And then she said, "Why don't you write it down? The doctor told us to write it down. You're going to forget." He said, "No, no, I'm not going to forget." He said, "While you're there, when you have the ice cream, why don't you get some strawberries in the ice cream?" And she immediately reminded him again, "You're going to forget. Why don't you write it down? Write it down, that ice cream." He said, "No, no, don't worry. I know you want ice cream. You want strawberries on it." And then she immediately added, "You know what? I want some whipped cream on it." And he said, "Now you're really going to forget. There are three things." And I said, "No." He gets irritated. He said, "No, no, no. I know for sure that you want ice cream with strawberries and whipped cream. Let me go get it for you." And he goes into the kitchen. He rappels around his vessels, and 20 minutes later, he comes back and he gives his wife a plate with bacon and eggs. And then she immediately stares at him for a moment. And with this puzzled look, she looks at him and says, "Where are my toast?" Remember. So the Psalms 20 that we read. So Psalms 20 is giving thanks to the Lord, right? It's the royal psalm. If you look at Psalms 21, the war is over, and that's also called the royal psalm. And now they're giving thanks to the Lord. So these two chapters go together. You know, when we talk about remembering, there are things. There's so many things we remember, right? We have to remember about the Lord. But there are a few things that I want to focus on today. On why do we have to remember? What is that we need to remember? You know, the first thing that I wanted to talk about, or the Lord laid in my heart, was God is a God of restoration. You know, He is a God. That's the nature of God. He restores things. You know? And if you read with me, if somebody can turn to John 10:10.
The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly.
So God comes to give you life in abundance, to restore whatever the thief is going to steal from you. Whatever it takes from you, He wants to come. You know, the worldly word definition of restoration is what would you say a definition of restoration is? It's something to return the condition of something in its original form. Correct? You, like it's a watch, you're restoring it. If it's you just clean it up, or you tidy it up, or you make it its original condition. That is the worldly sense of restoration. But biblical sense of restoration, like Pastor Tom, a friend of ours who you said, he said, biblical restoration is to bring back to an increased, multiplied, or improved condition that is significantly better than the original condition. This is biblical restoration. To bring back to an increased, multiplied, or improved condition that is significantly better than the original condition. So if you are here thinking about, Lord, why did this happen to me? Why is this going on right now? Why is this situation in my life right now? The Lord's telling you that I am a God of restorer. And I'm going to bring a restoration in your life. And I'm just not going to bring it to your original condition, but I'm going to bring it to an increased, multiplied, and improved state. Something that's significantly better than what you had before. So be encouraged. So when you are in a situation, remind yourself of this God who is a God of restoration. You know, there was a testimony of one man who showed up in Pastor Tom's church. This man was Jeremiah. He was 41 years old. So he apparently stumbled upon the church. He knocked on the door, and Pastor Tom, as he normally does, he invited him, and he was talking to him. And when talking to him, he asked him about where he was and what was going on, where is he going, how is he carrying his life and all that. And then he came to know that Jeremiah had been away from home for 20 years, and he had no connection with anybody in his family. He was wandering, and he was on his way to Washington. And Pastor prayed for him, and and he left. And then, sure, but 5 minutes after he left, the secretary walks in, and then Pastor happened to share the story with Michelle, the secretary. Michelle was here, if you remember, she was here about a couple of months back. She was here sitting here, and she attended our service. And Michelle immediately thought about him and said, "Does he know his family? Does the family know he's alive? Does he know that he's here?" And then she runs out of the church looking for this man who left the church. And she goes around asking anybody, "Did you see the young man with the backpack?" And nobody had seen him, so she obviously comes back to the church. And about 20, 30 minutes later, here comes Jeremiah. He said, "Did somebody look for me?" And he walks into the office. And Michelle, at that moment, her son, Tommy, walks in. And she says, "Jeremiah, look at Tommy. He's 20 years old. And if he was lost for 20 years, that would kill me. Jeremiah, there must be somebody that I can reach out. There's somebody that I can call. Who do you want me to call? Give me a name, I'll find them for you." And she was persistent. And Jeremiah reluctantly gave his sister's number or a name because he lost all the contacts. And Michelle somehow searches through the internet and the Facebook, and she finds this lady, Lisa. And she sends her a message saying that, "I think I found your son, your brother." And then she immediately reaches back to Michelle saying that, "We've been searching for him for 20 years. They've been searching in every homeless shelters, every police stations, and they've been sending flyers after flyers. They've never gave up hope on him." And they connected. And they got the flight ticket, and he went back to their house. And they meet them in the airport. There was a picture that I couldn't share today. They meet them. You know, what are the odds that somebody walking into a church 20 years later, they get the family back together? There's restoration. Isn't our God a God of restorer? You know, that's the character of God. Restoration is a character. In Jeremiah 30:17, we read, "But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord." You know, 1 Peter, can somebody read 1 Peter 5:10? "But may the God of all grace, who called us into eternal glory by Jesus Christ, after you suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you." No matter what you're going through, no matter what you see today, God says that I will restore you. I will make things perfect for you. I will establish you. I will strengthen you, and I will settle you. Now take courage in that knowledge that God is a God of restoration. And remind yourself, no matter what you're going through, whatever you face today, whatever uncertainties that you see, or whatever disappointments that you see, remind yourself that God is a God of restoration. He's just not going to bring it back to the original state. He's going to bring it to an increased, multiplied, and improved condition that will be significantly better than what was before. Now, obviously, we all know this chapter, Psalms 23. Right? Psalms 23, 4 and 6. "In the presence of our enemies, he will prepare a table, and he will anoint my head with oil." And he says, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Now, in the presence of your enemies, no matter who you face or whatever trouble you're facing, God is going to restore that in your life. He's going to anoint your head with oil. He's going to prepare a table in the presence of your enemies. He'll honor you. And surely goodness will follow you all the days of your life. Another thing I want you to remember, that He is a God of redemption. You know, we have all sinned and come short of the glory of God. Correct? We've all fallen short. We've all been called the children of wrath. You know, when you know the culture of the history of the Old Testament, when there was a tabernacle, when we had the temple, and when they had the holies of holies, once a year, the high priest will enter into the Holy of Holies on behalf of the land, on behalf of the people. Right? We know that if there was any blemish found in the high priest, there's only one man who was appointed to represent the nation. Right? And he had to be consecrated, he needs to be pure. And they send him inside the Holies of Holies to intercede for the people, to pray for, to ask the Lord for things for the people. And they will tie a rope around him and they'll send him inside. Why? Do you know why they do that? Correct. But why would he die? If he is found not worthy to be in the presence of God. You know, somebody asked this question to Ravi Zacharias, Dr. Ravi Zacharias. They asked him, why wouldn't God want to have the unbelievers in his presence? And he said that it is not God who doesn't want people to be in his presence. He said they cannot be in his holiness. They cannot be in his holiness. They cannot be in the presence of God in his holiness because of their uncleanness. They'll be consumed. That's why they cannot come into the presence of God. Do you know that you and I did not have that access to the Father? Do you know in the holy temple that you and I, as Gentiles, we were in the outer court, not even the outer court, we were the outside. We didn't have access to the Father. But what Jesus did for you, the redemptive power, the blood that he shed for you, the lamb that was without blemish, without sin that was shed for you, that you and I have access to the Father. You know, today when we come, we casually say, Lord, let your presence come. Lord, I want to be in your presence. You know how significant that term is? That you and I cannot be in the presence of God if not for the redemptive power of Jesus Christ. God has redeemed us. He's removed the sin that would separate us from God forever. He just brought us into himself. So remember the grace that he has bestowed upon you and me. The redemption of the blood, the sacrifice of the lamb, that you and I can come into his presence as sons. You know, he didn't just redeem you. Okay, we read in Galatians 4, 3 and 5, he not only redeemed us who are under the law, so that he brought us to be adopted as sons. He just didn't pay our price that we could be sinless. He just didn't do that, right? He also said, I'm going to make you sinless. I'm going to make you worthy to be in my presence, but I'm going to adopt you as a son to have the inheritance of God. I want you to remember that. You know, remember the goodness of God. Many a times we take that casually, of the grace that we have, that the presence that we could enjoy of what the Lord did for us on the cross. That's why we partake in this communion so often. We take it as often as we can. Do it in your homes as a man of the house or the leader of the house. Do it within your homes. Remind yourself the redemptive power of the Holy God, of how we shed the blood and that you come into that sonship because of the redemption. So remind yourself of God, of redemption. You know, another thing I want you to remember, that God is a God of mountains. You know, in Psalms 121:1, we read, I lift my eyes to the hills. From where comes my help? My help comes from the maker of heaven and earth. You know, he didn't just say that I'm going to look up to the hills. Hills is not going to do you anything. But I'm going to be looking up to the maker of heaven and earth. But there is this reference of God being in the mountains or the hills, right? When Moses was called, he was called up to meet with the Lord, right? When he first met with the Lord. And when they came back from Egypt after the exile, when they came back, you know, the Lord said, let them all stay down. Let them not even come to the foot of the mountain. But you come up. You know, there's a reference of God, our God, being the God of the mountains. Now, mountains symbolize, you know, mountains there could there be two references made in a common sense that mountains can be an obstruction, but mountains in this case is high place for us. This is what we are referring here. Is high place, a place of honor, a place of God's blessings. You know, Psalms 133:3, we talk about the Mount of Zion. From there, the Lord has commanded the blessings. Psalms 133:3. From the Mount of Zion, the Lord is commanding the blessings. You know, you probably all know this story, but I'm going to go through this story. King, 1 Kings chapter 20. So this is a story where the Syrians are going to come and wage a war against the Israelites. How many of you know the story where Ahab was a king and he had his palace in Samaria, and Hadad, he was a king of Syria. What he does is he wants to come and wage a war with Israel, so he collects about 32 kings, and he brings 32 other kings to come and wage a war against Israel. And he comes against Samaria. He comes and closes in. So we'll read. Let's start from chapter. I'm just going to read the chapter. It's a story, so you'll understand the story. 1 Kings chapter 20. Now Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his forces together. 32 kings were with him, with horses and chariots. See, again, here they make references to horses and chariots, implying the horses and chariots at those days were like the tanks of the day. You know, they were so powerful in the battle, the horses and the chariots. So they're making the reference that they not only they had 32 kings with them, but they all had horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and made war against it. So if you see, Samaria was on a little hill. It was about 500 feet above. They had valleys all around it. So the Samaria was on top of a hill, and Ahab had his palace on top. So the reference that we've all talked about, right? God is a God of the mountains, because he met with Moses there, and David was crying out that that I will lift up my eyes to the hills. So the people around the land, they also referred God of Israel as a God of the mountains. So then he sent messengers, verse 2, the messengers into city of Ahab, the king of Israel, and said to him, "Thus says Ben-Hadad, your silver." So he's going and he's causing trouble. He's asking Ahab, "I need all your silver and gold. I need all your wives. I need all your sons." And Ahab says, "Okay, I'm going to give them to you." And then the messenger goes back and conveys a message to the king of Syria saying that he's agreed. So the king of Syria said, "Oh, he gave up so easily, so I'm going to ask for more." So he sends the messenger again to king of Israel, and he says that, "I'm going to send my servants into your houses of your servants, and everything that pleases your eyes, I'm going to take." So Ahab, now he's a little upset. He's saying that he asked me for everything. I said I'm going to give it to him, but see, he's coming and he's picking up a battle with me. And he calls his elders and they say, "Okay, see, what can I do?" And the elders say, "Don't give it to him. Tell him that I'm not going to give it to you." So he sends a message to king of Syria, Ben-Hadad, is saying that I'm not going to give it to you. And immediately you can see the boast of Ben-Hadad. He's saying, the dust of Syria doesn't even account to the people that follow me to come against you as for the war. The army that he had, he's saying that my army is so big that the dust from Syria is only a handful of the people that I have. So he's saying that, don't refuse. I'm going to come and destroy you. He had so many people there with him. And Ahab tells him, don't boast. He's saying, don't boast like the one who removes the armor. Okay, you need to survive the battle, and you need to boast only, like, until the war is done. He's saying, don't talk, shut up. Don't brag. Talk when you're alive, and then we'll see. So now what happens is there's a prophet that comes to Ahab because they know war is brewing. The king of Syria is going to wage a war. And the prophet comes and meets with King Ahab and tells him that the Lord is asking you to go and battle right now. And he's saying that I'm going to give you governors. And you know how many governors they had? 232 governors. And they're going to go against a war against how many? They had so many people that they were not, they were more than the dust of Samaria. And Ahab saying, okay, who's going to start the war? And the prophet says, well, you are the one who's going to start the war. He says, I have only 232 people. He says, all right, gather some more people. So they end up with 7,000 people. You know what is the reference made for the army of Israel against the army of Syria? They said the army of Israel were like two flocks of sheep among the people. So they were so little people. And I told you Samaria was on the hill. And the prophet gives an order saying, go and fight with them. And immediately the Samarian, the governors, they go against Syria, and they all get scared and they run away, including the king, Ben-Hadad. He runs away. And they slaughter so many people, 7,000 people. They slaughter so many people. So immediately after this, after they've run back to their home, the Syrian army, they run back to their home, they all sit and talk, and the army generals are coming to the king and saying, you know what? We didn't just lose the war. It was because of their God that was with them. And he says that their God is a God of the mountains. If you can turn with me to so 23. Then the servants of the king of Syria said to him, they're talking, now they're going and having a conference of saying, well, how did they lose the war? When there's so many people that they could have easily crushed Israel, they lost the war. So they're having a conference to see, okay, what happened? And the servants of the king said to him, the gods are the gods of the hills. Therefore they're stronger than we. And if we fight against them in the plain, surely we'll be stronger than they. So they're kind of mocking on Yahweh, saying that they won the battle not because of their strength, but because of their God. But their God is only a God of the hills, not of the valley. You know, so we know that God is a God of the mountains, right? We know that He's a God who gives us blessings from there. Now, many a times when we have blessings after blessings, or when we have promotions after promotions, or when we have, favor after favor, sometimes we tend to forget that it was Lord that waged the battle. Sometimes we put our hope and trust in the horses and the chariots that brought us there. And the Lord says, do not put your trust in the horses and chariots, but it's in me, in my name. So when we have, the blessings, when you talk about blessings, we know that the blessings comes from God, right? We know that He's the one who promotes us. He's the one who gives us a job. He's the one who gives us favor and family and relationships and life and grace and mercy. Everything we know is coming from the Lord. On a good day, the God, it feels like you're in the mountains, right? You're in the high places. You're in a place of honor. And God works for you in mountain. But when you're in the valley, do you know that you still have the same God? Do you know that can you remember that He's still the God of the valleys? In the same chapter, in verse 20, in chapter 20, if you read further on, we read that the prophet comes back to King Ahab, and he says, no, Ahab, you got to understand this. Ahab was not the best of the kings. Right? He was one of the worst kings Israel could have. He was not walking in the way of the Lord. He was not pleasing the Lord. He is the one who raised the poles for Baal. He is the one who followed after his wife Jezebel and did every detestable things. He's the one who ordered the prophets to be killed. He allowed the prophets to be killed. He was not in the right place with the Lord. But God still was helping him win the battle in this case. Here we see that the prophet comes and tells the king Ahab, he says that, they are defiling my name. They're saying that I'm the God of the mountains, and I'm not the God of the valleys. So I'm going to show them that I'm the God of the valleys too. So if you think you're in a valley, you may think that Moses and Abraham and David, they're all in high places, and He's a God for them, the God of the mountains for them, and I am nobody. I'm here, sitting here. I'm nobody. God wants to tell you that I'm the God of the valleys. No, I know your pain. No, we read in the story where they go and they beat uh, the, the, the army of Syria. They kill entire army. They spare the king. God was not happy about that. But God is a God of the mountains, and the same God is a God in the valleys. You know, I want you to remember that God is being good to you. Do not put your trust in the horses and in the chariots. Your horses and your chariots could be, your jobs, your title, your 401ks, your bank statements. But put your trust in the Lord. Putting the trust, this word trust in this chapter, in this verse, Psalms 27. There's a word called naskir. That's a Hebrew word. And it's been used only twice in the Bible. And naskir here means remembering, bring to remembrance, bring to mind. And it also says that you call to mind usually as affecting present feeling, thought, or action. This word that naskir means that you need to bring to your memory, bring to your remembrance, and bringing that will affect your thought or your action. So when I say that, trust in the Lord, in this place, it means that remember the name of the Lord. Remember the goodness of God. Now, the Lord has been so good to you. That's why we have the whole Bible, right? When we read it, we know what the Lord has done to the prophets, to the apostles, to the kings. And then that's what we teach the little kids too. We teach them the Bible verses. Why? We want them to remember. And I'm encouraging you today, no matter what you're facing, no matter what you're going through, is to remember that He's a God of restoration, that He's a God of redemption. No matter what state you are, wherever you are, God will redeem you. And He's a God of the mountains. When you're having your blessings and everything good that's happening, do not forget God. Do not put your confidence in the things that you've achieved. Remember, it was a God that brought you there. God of the mountains and in your valley. Remember that He is not only God for Abraham, Moses, and David. He's your God too. No matter what you see, what you face, that He's your God and He's going to help you through your valleys, your pain, your sorrow, your loss, your disappointments. That God is going to walk you through it.